Chapter 1. The Promotion. Ino Esperanta would have been forgiven for thinking that yesterday was the most important day of her military career. She was a tactical officer serving aboard one of the most important warships in the Coalition, the Marathon. That would be reason enough for Ino to rest on her laurels, but just yesterday, Ino had reached even greater heights. The previous day, the Marathon had participated in the Liberation of Cevasia. During the 15-hour battle, Marathon was the spearhead of a major assault. The enemy, an alien race called the Desticans, were soundly defeated and put to flight. While Destican starships fled from the planet Cevasia, their armies on the surface were crushed by a Coalition invasion. Finally, in a glorious ceremony, the victorious Coalition soldiers returned the planet Cevasia to its rightful owners, the Cevanti people. And in the midst of it all, Ino had her own moment of heroism. During the long and arduous battle, Ino had worked in the Combat Information Center, or CIC. Here, she and her fellow tactical officers analyzed all incoming data from the ship's sensors. They studied the battlefield and recommended new courses of action to the command staff. The battle had entered its 14th hour when it happened. The chief tactical officer, a man named Escola, suddenly stopped talking. He froze up, seemingly unable to move. Ino was the first to realize what was happening. Escola was suffering from a nervous breakdown. 14 hours of continuous combat had taken its toll on him, and Escola was no longer able to do his duty. So Ino took over. No one gave her permission to do so. She simply assumed command of the CIC, and for one incredible hour, Ino was Chief Tactical Officer aboard a warship in the middle of a soon-to-be legendary battle. She was so excited that she barely slept that night. Instead, Ino used her communicator to gossip happily with her fellow TOs for hours, until she finally passed out. The next morning, Ino reported to duty at the CIC at the usual time, just before the start of Alpha Shift. She found her Delta Shift counterpart and tapped him on the shoulder. "Prispin, I'm here early. Go get some sleep." Lieutenant Commander Prispin Valent was a colony-born human who had never set foot on Earth. His ethnic ancestry was so mixed that it was impossible to assign a racial identity to him. Ino, by contrast, was an Argentine woman of Caucasian heritage. Although if one looked closely, Ino did not perfectly match the stereotypical look of an Argentine, suggesting her ancestors were not rooted in the South American country. Ino and Prispin looked very unlike each other. Ino was short and skinny, with straight blonde hair and vivid green eyes. Prispin was a head taller than Ino, had curly brown hair, dim hazel eyes, and a much larger belly than he would like to admit. Prispin's homeworld, Terra Nova, had much weaker gravity than Earth, and he had some trouble adapting to the simulated Earth-like gravity aboard Marathon. Despite their differences, Prispin and Ino were friends. He let out a deep sigh and relinquished his headset to Ino. "This has got to be the most intense high-traffic zone in the galaxy right now," Prispin said. "Millions of Cevanti are coming back to their homeworld, and somehow we still haven't finished chasing the enemy out of the system." "Where are the hostiles?" Ino asked, sitting down at the computer terminal. "Heading for the hyper relay," Prispin answered. "What's left of them, anyway. The TV news guys are already calling it the hyper lane of death. Our side is just slaughtering the Desticans as they try to retreat. It's a massacre. Oh, by the way," Prispin held his hand over Ino's shoulder to get her attention, but did not actually touch her. He knew Ino was the type of person who did not respond well to unwanted touching. "Don't get comfortable. I heard the captain's going to call you up to the bridge any moment now." Less than 5 minutes after Prispin left the CIC, a voice called over the intercom. "Tactical Officer Esperanta to the bridge. Esperanta to the bridge." Ino left the CIC, pausing at the exit when she noticed that Chief Tactical Officer Escola was nowhere to be seen. Then she moved down the corridor and used the central stairs to move up to Deck 1. The bridge was a hive of activity. Captain Klein moved about the scene like the conductor of an orchestra preparing for a big show. Ino realized the aftermath of a big battle could be just as hectic as the battle itself. Starfighter patrols were taking off and landing from the hangar bays. Transport vessels ferried Marines to and from disabled ships. The navigator and helmsman worked together to keep track of friendly, civilian, and disabled starships in the vicinity. Looking out one of the windows of the port wing, a portion of the bridge that overlooked the left-hand side of the ship, Ino could see the planet Cevasia, a silver marble hanging in space. "You Esperanta?" an officer asked. Ino snapped back to reality. The chief of the watch, a man called Garrison, was trying to get her attention. "Yes, sir, I am," Ino replied. Right, follow me," said the chief of the watch. He led Ino across the bridge and introduced her to the executive officer, Commander Arshad Al-Qazi. "I know you," the commander said. "I was chief tactical officer back when you first joined our crew last year." Ino beamed as Commander Al-Qazi shook her hand. "Well, the captain's busy, so I get to do the honors," Al-Qazi said. "I have to tell you that after being evaluated in Medbay, Lieutenant Commander Escola will not be returning to duty as Chief Tactical Officer. This time tomorrow, he'll be looking at a medical retirement from military service. Captain Klein has decided that you, Esperanta, will take his place." Commander Al-Qazi reached out and demanded to see Ino's military ID card. She handed it over, and he scanned it at the nearest computer terminal. "Axiom. Recognize new duty assignment for Lieutenant Commander Esperanta, Chief Tactical Officer. Grant the appropriate permissions and authorizations for the role." "Understood. Authorizing," said the voice of Axiom, a shackled AI that formed the core of Marathon's computer system. Commander Al-Qazi returned Ino's card to her. "From now on, you will report to the bridge at the start of your shift and present a status report to myself. Understood?" Al-Qazi said. He allowed himself to smile. "I knew you'd follow after me. It was a matter of time until you got the job." The news of Ino's promotion reached the CIC before she did, and the change in her situation was apparent quickly. Now, tactical officers would give their reports to her instead of Escola. "So, they made you Chief TO, but didn't promote you to Commander? That's not fair," said Ensign Pines, a Canadian woman. "You should complain." "Ensign, when word of this battle gets back to Earth, we are all going to drown in medals and awards and promotions," Ino replied. "You've just got to be patient." Lieutenant Commander Barrett, a white American, shook his head. "Esperanta, you've met the girls who work in the CIC. You and I both know the only award they care about is a kiss and a head pat from President Horner." "Shut up, sexist!" Ensign Pines threw a clipboard at Barrett. "Barrett might be sexist, but President Horner is still a dreamboat," said Ensign Johnson, a British man. "If I find out he fancies men, you know I'll be first in line." "I love how the President of Earth is the only thing we can agree on," Ino laughed. "Now, what about the battlefield? Is there anything we can agree on out there?" "3 things," said Ensign Pines. "First up, one of our recon flights spotted an enemy cruiser, distance 39 AU, bearing 088 plus 21. Second, there's a hole in our proximity sensor network over in Sector 112. Last up, at least 20 friendly vessels have reported being hit by micrometeoroids while transiting from Cevasia to the local starbase." Ino was in her element. Analyzing battlefield information was at the very core of her duties as a tactical officer. She mentally triaged the information, quickly deciding which of these items was most important. "Tell me, how big was that hole in the proximity sensor network?" Ino asked. "About 400 meters wide," said Barrett. "Where? And who's the closest friendly vessel?" Barrett quickly found and relayed the information to Ino. Ino nodded and tapped the microphone attached to her headset. she spoke through it to the bridge. Con, CIC, I have a 400-meter hole in our proximity sensor network, 431 AUs away, bearing 126-19. Closest friendly contact is the Silent Hunter Squadron, electronic warfare unit flying Su-77 starfighters. Commander Alkazi acknowledged Ino's message, and moments later, the bridge crew went to work. The Marathon launched 2 squadrons of starfighters from her hangar bays. While the MiG-95 squadrons went off to aid their allies, the secondary and tertiary sensors were brought online. Ino's team worked at breakneck pace, keeping a steady stream of battlefield updates moving from their room to the bridge. After about an hour, Ino received an update from the air boss, an officer responsible for the starfighters assigned to Marathon. CIC, air boss, said the voice of Chief Petty Officer Joffrey Al-Haned. Ashwinder Squadron found your culprits. A group of enemy corvettes punched through the sensor net and tried to get behind us. Ashwinder and Cyborg Squadrons engaged and forced them to turn back. Enemy is in retreat. Good copy, air boss, Ino said. Casualties and losses? The enemy lost 2 out of 6 destroyers. 1 more was damaged, Al-Haned replied. Ashwinder Actual says his wingman got clipped by AA fire, but he's limping home. 2 MiGs are staying behind to escort him. Both squadrons should be landing in the next few minutes, and we're rolling crash trucks for the Ashwinder who got hit. Ino thanked the air boss for keeping her posted, and then she passed this report along to the bridge. It went on like this for a few more hours. The main battle had ended the previous day, and today's action could best be described as a mop-up operation. Marathon rejoined her escort fleet, a flotilla of nearly 100 smaller vessels, and together the group known as Phoenix Fleet set out for their next objective. Finally, almost 36 hours after arriving at Cevasia, Captain Klein gave the order to stand down from battle stations. As soon as Ino's beta shift counterpart arrived to take over the CIC, she left to take a well-earned rest. Ino found Prisbin in the officers' lounge, located on one of the upper decks, and contained a dining area, a bar games such as billiards and darts, and a miniature theater with 3 rows of seating. Prisbin was relaxing on a couch, watching the planet Cevasia recede into the distance. "How was your first day as the new chief?" Prisbin asked. "I think I'll make it 6 months before I go the way of Escola," Ino replied in an overdramatic tone. "I need to pick up a new hobby to blow off some steam." "If you go down to the rec room where the enlisted crew hang out, there's a basketball court and a karaoke room," Prisbin suggested. "I haven't played sports since I was in high school," Ino laughed. "I'd make a fool of myself. Tell you what, I'll play basketball if you agree to be my teammate." "Deal. I need the exercise anyway," Prisbin said. "By the way, I heard we've got new mission orders. Tomorrow, we're going in there." He pointed out the window at a distant point of light. Ino followed his gaze and spotted a megastructure. Megastructures are gargantuan space stations, sometimes the size of small moons, and sometimes even larger than that. Ino recognized the distant shape. "That's a hyper relay," Ino said. "We could use that to reach the next system in a couple of days." "Normally it would take us over a month to get there," Prisbin said. "I'm glad we're back in a region of space where hyper relays are widespread. Those things have shortened the war by years." "Agreed," Ino said. "Without the hyper relays, it probably would have taken us something like 20 years to liberate Cevasia. Instead, they had to put up with just 9 months of occupation. Technology really is a miracle sometimes." "More miraculous than Axiom," Prisbin said, gesturing to the ceiling. "I thought you couldn't get enough of that AI." Ino rolled her eyes and called up to the ceiling. "Don't worry, Axiom. I still love you." The ship's AI responded from an intercom box. "Your appreciation is noted, Lieutenant Commander, and, may I say, very welcome." Nearby, a few junior officers laughed, then jumped with surprise when Ino and Prisbin started to join in, giggling relentlessly. Ino felt like she was living out the happy ending of an epic story.
Creeping in my sword's getting out of control. I gotta find my escape, get out of this black hole. Cause justice in the world is hard to find. Time has come, gotta make up my mind. No matter how deep or remote I hide, all my thoughts seem caught up inside. Creeps from the deeps, gonna be freaking up your mind. Creeps from the deeps,